Hi, everybody. This is Ty Durant from Want to Become an Expert in PowerPoint. And I really want to thank the people who are coming on now, and likewise the people who are going to watch this in the future. I'm going to do a series of these broadcasts to try to help people, whether they have questions about PowerPoint, whether it's related to the class or just PowerPoint in general. So in other words, it doesn't have to be directly related to something that is taught. Oop, sorry about that. Something that is taught. But also any questions that you may have about what we did in the class or things that you might have come across in PowerPoint. PowerPoint is actually a really powerful tool, and you probably already know that if you're in this class and or if you have just used PowerPoint in general. And so I really want to take this time to introduce myself very briefly for those people who are not taking the class, but again, going to watch us later on or live but are not part of the class. My name is Ty Durant. I've been an instructional designer for quite a few years. I've been involved in education for probably, a long time. It's probably about 19, 20 years by now that I've been involved in education one way or another. I was a public school teacher for a while. Then I went back and finished up my grad school degree in instructional design. And that was probably about 9, 10 years ago. And since then, I've done a lot of curriculum development work for a lot of companies. I've done work for some federal government agencies, some state agencies, and a lot of private companies. Currently, right now, the bulk of my work is with Lockheed Martin, and I do a lot of curriculum development work for them in PowerPoint presentations. So that's a little bit about me. And again, part of this is really to answer questions that people may have about what is going on. So if you have questions, again, you can shoot me in a Twitter message at Twitter, Ty Durant at Twitter, or of course you could use the live chat that we have here, or of course you could text me through the Udemy course and have your courses, have your classes there. And like I said, this will not be the first one. This will be one of several that I will do throughout time. Now, one of the things that these live broadcasts are going to be also is to try to gauge what kind of things that you as the viewer or you or as the person who takes the class would like to see more of. So in other words, we have a course right now about becoming an expert in PowerPoint in a weekend. And so I want to have the class where you have quite a few hours of it, but I don't really want to get to the point where we have 15, 20 hours worth of content because that's not really weekend. Yes, I know there's 48 hours in a weekend, but nobody's going to, well, I shouldn't say nobody. Very few people are going to sit down for that long on the weekend to learn something. So I really want to have additions to the course, or I want to have a course length of no more than 10 hours. And so I'm hoping to be rolling content on that might make things a little bit better. In other words, how we can improve the course of the existing material, but also what can we add to new material that will make things better as well. And again, that's where you come in, especially if you are already taking the course. What kind of things would you like to see improved in the course? What kind of new topics would you like to see in the course? I'm really here for you to try to make that better, because again, I appreciate any of the students who are taking the course. And of course, even if you're not taking the course and you just happen to be joining this live event or you ask questions later on, I'm always happy to help whenever I can, because PowerPoint is probably one of the most underrated tools out there. And I think that once you know a little bit more about it, even if you've been using PowerPoint for a while, often with the company I'm with now, I do a lot of work with people who have been working on PowerPoint, forever. But in a lot of ways, they don't know a lot of the. I can't just say tips and tricks, because tips and tricks you can say, well, that's an easy pickup. You could just Google something, but you don't know what to Google if you haven't used it before, if you didn't know it even exists. And so I've taught a lot of time. Actually, that's what inspired this course. I was spending a lot of time teaching people who had been using PowerPoint for 5, 10 years how to do different things in PowerPoint. And that really what inspired this class. And so that's kind of where the spin-off from this is. So without further ado, let's kind of get to it. I'm going to switch into PowerPoint. And actually what I'm going to do first, actually, before we do that, is I want to tackle a particular thing about creating titles. If you know from the course, again, we've done a lot of things about combining shapes and about how to do edit points, how to do all those type of things. We also looked at things like lower thirds and how to use, of course I'm pulling the absolute blank, right? How to use something like the lower thirds and how to use a rule of thirds to make better presentations. And the thing that I'm going to really focus on today, at least with this session, is really how to do good titles. And when I say titles, I mean that opening slide. Well, actually, let me say it like this. There's always that opening slide that the slide really first starts on. In other words, you are actually talking. I'm not talking about when someone walks into the room, because usually what I will do personally is I will not have my first slide up, or the slide that is actually about my presentation, when people walk in. I usually have an opening slide. In other words, I'll have my name, maybe the title of what it is, and the time that we're slated to start at. But it'll be very generic, okay? A simple black and white slide, usually, with that information on it. And then what I would consider a title slide is when I'm actually starting the presentation, when I'm actually starting to talk to people. People have already filed in, people have already sat down, and I'm starting to say, okay, this is what we're going to be talking about today. You're all here for X, Y, and Z. Let's get on it. Let's talk about it. And then I click, and then what I call the title slide then actually starts. So we're actually going to work on some of that, because title slides are very important. Most of us, we don't really take time to think about those type of things. Again, too many times people have their title slide up first. There is no anticipation. One thing about any type of art, but especially visual arts, or maybe what you want to consider delivery arts, whether it be theater or movies or doing a presentation in general, is you really want to think about anticipation. What can you do to create either visual interest to make people try to figure out or try to think about or get their brain engaged to what's coming up next, or just to have a little bit of anticipation about, what's there and what can be done or where you're going. So title slides really do that. You can really find a nice way to get into your title slides and get into some design that will make and generate interest and generate anticipation. Okay, so that's what we're going to look at today in this first session. So again, I hope you enjoy it, and let's see where we go from here. So I'm going to switch over first to Google. One thing I will say, if you're an art student or a design student and you go to art school, they're not going to just say, oh, here's a paintbrush, start painting. No. What you're going to do first is you're going to start looking around at the masters. You're going to start looking around at inspiration. They're going to say, let's study Rembrandt. Because you can, while you might not be Rembrandt, you may never be Rembrandt, there are techniques that Rembrandt maybe did that you can pick up on. And so the same is designed for any type of title. Any type of title that we're doing for your presentation, we can easily set it up. Excuse me, we should be always looking for inspiration. You don't want to just go into anything cold. Now, again, there was a section in the course when we talked about how to do a brainstorm or how to do a mind map and generate ideas from there. We're also going to put some of that into practice in this session looking at titles. So let's go to Google, pull it up, let's switch over. And let's pull up the Google machine. All right, so put the Google. Now, the first thing I want to say is when I'm looking for inspiration, like I said prior, one of the first things I look at is print. Print, now when I say print, I'm not talking about books. I'm talking about print like magazines. Print is a great place to draw inspiration because there's a lot of fantastic artists and people who have spent their whole life doing design work and trying to figure out what looks good on a page, and they've been doing it for years. So you also should use some of those people's expertise to try to figure out what you can put for a title, or what you can use for a title slide. Because again, your title slide is going to make a big difference as far as what people think about what it is that you're making, what your presentation is that's going on. And that's going to go a long way to help you come up with something really nice. So I want you to look here. There's a lot of good things here. As you can see, I just went to Google and I typed in creative magazine page layouts. And I'm looking for, again, this, even though it's a layout for a magazine, it's also a good way to think about, well, this can easily be a PowerPoint presentation. Maybe not this huge amount of text right here, but you have a nice graphic here. Again, very simple shapes just combined together. You know, a couple circles punched out, maybe a circle with no fill overlaid in each other, a set of circles here that have fills of images. Again, all things I showed you how to do in the class. And this is the same type of layout or same type of graphic. And if you notice here, we have this casualties of conscience. And if you look here carefully, this title section coincides obviously with the graphic. So we have this green here, we have a green here, we have a black here, we have a black here, we have a gray, and this is more like a combination of gray and green. But again, these two are clearly linked together in color scheme and in form. And when I say form, look how circular that O is, or how circular the C's are in here. If you notice, these are very pushed down and very rounded is the font here. These go along with the very much rounded sets of graphics that are here. So they go together. They are connected even if you don't realize it just by glancing at it. But the more design work you do, the more you'll realize how some of these different things are connected. And again, you can see where they clearly did that here. Let's close this one. Let's look at some other ones. Let's look at this. Again, this can very easily be a PowerPoint presentation title slide. You can have your title here. Obviously, I'll make it larger because you want the text to be able to be a little bit, be read from behind, in the back of the room. Whereas a magazine layout, obviously, it's right in front of the person, so they're going to be able to read it easily. So I would increase the font size here. But again, we have this nice intermix of these hexagons with all these different various images put in it. And again, these could be various chapters or various sections about that you're going to go over in your presentation. So maybe I want to have this many diamonds, but again, you can get the same general idea and use something like that for a title graphic or a title slide. Let's look at a couple more of these. And then we'll get into actually starting to make some of these different items. And again, we're not going to spend a lot of time with it. This is nice right here. Let's look at this view image. And again, this is a very simple graphic. An oversized image here. White space, giving it that nice border. And if you notice here, they have different sizes of the fonts. These different sizes of fonts is what's gonna bring you in as far as visual interest goes. You're gonna go right to this big millions right here, and then to the black of how to spend in millions, and then how in your. And if you look closely, you probably notice this too here, but you want to see it right at the start. This is a good way to cluster something. And if this was a presentation, you want to direct the eye from left to right. Why left to right? Because left is where you were in the presentation, right is where you're going to in the presentation. So in other words, by clustering this here, see how the eye will naturally curve down and into this millions, and then into this beautiful image here, and then down to this corner here, where you have this white grouping. Now again, if you're doing a PowerPoint template, you probably wouldn't have that white grouping. But even this would clearly pull your eye in this direction. And again, you want to do that because you want people to anticipate what your next slide is going to be. And so that's why they do things like this in magazines. And you might not have even known that, but again, that's just experience and how these things are typically made by, again, drawing the eye very carefully. All right, so that's enough inspiration for now, but I want to give you the general idea about what I was talking about there. So now let's look at some PowerPoint. I'm going to switch the live event to, excuse me, the sharing to my PowerPoint. Okay. Here you are. Okay, so here's my PowerPoint presentation. All right, so, okay. So here's my PowerPoint presentation. Again, we looked at some of those items and we looked at how form and function, how they intermixed both images and letters and words together to give a general feeling. And again, you can do the same type of thing with PowerPoint. So let's look at a couple different ways to do that. And again, you may be familiar with some of these types or some of these ways already. So let's pull in a text box. Like, okay, let's say I'm doing a presentation about water pollution. I think water pollution is a good one. Okay. So water. Actually, you know what? Let me just put polluted in one and then water in a separate one. I'll bump this up. Now, again, right now I'm using PowerPoint for the Mac, but again, most of these things will well, actually, I shouldn't say most. All these things will actually apply for in the PC version as well. I just happen to be using a Mac today. All right, well, quick thing that I actually should say about text and text boxes before we get into that is, obviously, everybody knows you can choose any of these different fonts, which are great. A lot of people have never used, though, these extra buttons over here, whether it be character spacing or font case. By clicking on these, you can do things like jump and have everything capitalized all at once, which again can be very handy if you want to select a whole word and you want to just capitalize it and you want to be able to play with it like that, or you want to do a quick change to see how things look without holding down the shift key. The other thing that you can do, and again, say this was a very large image. Let's bump it up a little bit more to 138. That sounds good. Because again, right now we're just going to kind of look at it. There's also this character spacing here. Now, one thing I will say, actually, let me duplicate this. And again, I just did Control D or Command D if you're on a Mac. If this is a very small, if this font size is small, like say it's, let's jump it down to like 16, and then I'll zoom in on it so you can really see. All right, so if we're here and we have this font and I choose character style, you can see the results much quicker. So let's make it very tight. You see how I pulled that in very, very, very close together? Now, if you did that exact same thing, oops, with this, and you chose very tight, you see how it barely moved? Character spacing or kerning, depending on your background, what you call it, determines the amount of space between the various letters. Okay, and PowerPoint by default doesn't really do it on a percentage. It does it based on the size of the font itself. So if you're doing a small font like 20, 24 and below, and you use any one of these, you'll notice a dramatic difference. If you're going larger, like I am in this case, I want to choose something like more spacing. And the more spacing, I can then in character style I can expand or I can condense it. In this case, I'm going to condense it. So let me condense it by, let's do 20 for now, and let's look at it. Feel that, pull that right in and right together. This can be a very nice way of pulling in your font, especially if you're going to do something where you're going to say punch a hole in an image, or maybe I should say if you're going to do masking treatment where you have your image and your image is showing through your text. You don't want to have the spacing too loose. You want to pull it in so you can see more of the image behind or what's inside of the text. So that's where character spacing comes in handy. Okay, so I'll leave that one for now with that. And as we said, we're going to do polluted water. Water. I'm going to bump this up also. And actually, let's make that around the same size. And this one, actually, I think I'm going to do this one uppercase. I'm going to make this one lowercase. And again, that's a good thing about having these ones. You could just quickly jump it up and down. And of course, I'm going to then adjust the letter spacing because I don't need that much letter spacing distance now because it's lowercase. There we go. Look at that. Beautiful. Okay. So I got polluted water. All right. What could I do to make this look a little bit better? One of the other ways you want to think about how to do a title is also looking at things like logos, especially logos based on text. One of the easiest way to make a title page look better is to find a way to substitute a letter in your title with an image, or integrate an image into a letter, which is what I think we should actually do in this case. So we have water. I think I'm gonna do it by the A. Delete, put an extra space in action. I'm gonna put another space in there. And duplicate that. But I'm just going to use the A in this case. Because what I think I'm going to do, because we're talking about water, I think I'm going to put a drop inside of the A. At least that's an initial thought. So let me move this a little bit, because again, it doesn't matter where this is. I'll put them together after. And I'll zoom in. Now for me, I'm just using Command plus to zoom in. You can do Control plus if you're on a PC to zoom in, or of course you always have the slider down here at the bottom too. All right, so this looks pretty good with the A, but what I want to do is I want to do a drop of water in the A. So let's see how we can do that. Let's insert a shape, and I know from my experience we have a shape. Here you go. That kind of looks like a water droplet, right? Not too bad. Let's check the size on that. It's not bad. I actually may want to use a font that is a little bit more spread, just because I don't know if I want it that tight in. I mean, it's not bad. Let's pull it out a little bit more. There we go. That's not too bad. All right, so this is what I'm going to do here. So again, this is where experience in planning your PowerPoint goes a little bit better. I'll show you the thought process. Even though I know what to do, I'm going to show you the thought process so that you kind of, from your experience, could do some of these in the future. All right, so I have my letter selected. And actually, let me put this one right here. Now, I know from PowerPoint, from experience, that if I put two letters together and I want to punch a hole in it, again, it's not an issue. I could easily do that. And whatever I select first is going to be what's considered the dominant shape. So that will be the shape that will be remaining. So I'm going to actually click the A first and then the shape here. Now, with that, if you didn't see, we have under format shape, you're going to have this little drop down section here. And from this, I'm going to do, let's do a subtract. Now under subtract, as you can probably see, it punched a hole directly in the A. Now when I say punched a hole, that's exactly what I mean. Let me click off it and change the background color so that you can see that it is indeed it punched a hole through it. Let's just change it to a blue. You see, this A actually has a water droplet type hole now into the A. And while that is kind of what I want, it's not exactly what I want. So again, that's what the beauty of Control Z. Actually, I guess a few Control Z's because I moved it. Okay. What I'm going to do here is I actually need 2 water droplets because I want to have the water droplet that punches a hole, but I also want to have a water droplet being that little A section right here in the middle. This little line. I forget what they call it in font terms. So excuse me if you're a graphic designer out there looking at this saying, "Oh, you don't know what that is in font terms." But of course, if you're a graphic designer, you probably aren't watching this course. All right. So what I need to do then, I know I need to duplicate it. And I think I'm going to actually put a line around this. Shape options. Let's go to line. And again, if you don't have this already open, you can right click on it and then do format shape to open that little menu up over here on the side. And again, PC is very similar to how it gets done. Okay, so let me drop a line on this right quick. I'm gonna drop a size 5 font, and I'm just gonna change the color just so it's easier for me to see. Okay, 5 is not bad. Let me bump it up. Whoop, I don't know if I want that bad. There you go. That's pretty good. All right, so I have this. I have this. I'm gonna put this here. That's what I think I want. I think that's better. I'll show you why. So okay, so now I want to select my A first. Oops. Let's actually select the A. Shift, and I'm going to select a teardrop shape. Click my format shape and subtract. Now again, it punched a hole directly in it. Great. Now what I'm going to do is take this and I'm actually going to turn this black. Black. Whoop, I chose outline. That's not what I want. No outline, fill, black. Now this I'm going to put right in here. Let me zoom in a little bit. Because what I want to do was take what was going to be the outline of the shape and do that. See, so I had that little area. Now, I don't necessarily like this, but one thing that will happen as soon as you took that A and you combined it with the other shape, it stopped becoming text. Let me say that again. As soon as you took that A and combined it with a shape, it stopped becoming text. So in other words, I can't now edit this A and remake it an A or remake it another letter. See, it doesn't work. It won't let you do it. This has become a shape. Now, the good thing about that is shapes have edit points. I'm going to right click, edit points. And now, let me move that out of the way. And now, see all these shapes? I can manipulate these different shapes now. So I'm going to take this. Yeah, let me delete that one because I don't need it. Actually, let me put that back here. So in other words, any of these items now, I can then, oh, you know what? That might be the easier way rather than me trying to manipulate all those shapes. So let's do this. Let's take shapes and let's grab the freeform shape. And I'm going to go from this corner to about this corner, that corner, to this corner, to that corner. Now I have, again, I have another shape. And the reason I'm doing that because I want to punch out the rest of that section. Choose the A, come back to the shape. I'm going to subtract again. There we go. Now I will edit my points. Points. And now I'm going to delete these extra points so that it's a smoother A. Here, delete point. There we go, because I want this nice and smooth. There we go. And I'm going to delete some of these points here. Delete point. Actually, I could probably leave that there. There you go. Now look, I'm going to take this. And now this becomes my A. You see? Again, just a little bit of visual interest. See the drop? Oops, let me zoom out. And actually, I'm going to combine these two. So I'm going to click this, click the shape, click the A, and I'm going to union it. Now, granted, I could just leave it. I could just make group it. Okay, but I'm going to union it. So now I have water. And actually, because we're talking about polluted water, we have polluted being black. I don't want water to be black, but I actually do want water to be more like the color of water. So I will go into my text options and I'll do a gradient fill. And yeah, I already got this nice little blue here. That's fine. Let's just change this color so it's a little bit more blue, less blue. And I'm going to put a little solid line around it of blue as well. Let's bump that up a little bit. There you go. And now, again, now we are conveying a singular idea. Polluted is black. The water itself is the color of water. But again, the drop inside and the A is black, denoting that the water is becoming polluted. Okay, so again, this is a good way to kind of make a title slide. And now I could put any image behind this, and I could group this in, and I could make these things I can make them come in via a transition or an animation, and it would be a good, easy way to put in a nice nice interest as far as what is in there. So let me see. Do I have any images of water? So again, we have the general idea that the polluted water is the problem. And again, we're to a point where the pollution has seeped into the water. And again, that's a good way to make a very simple, now obviously, well, maybe I shouldn't say obviously. I would put another image in here of some decent water. I probably would find a nice ocean scene. Actually, know what would be good with that is find what would be considered a typical scene out of maybe the third world where, you know, there's kids around and the water's just disgusting. And then what ends up happening is by putting that there, it's going to add a little bit of extra drama. I would also put a couple different, I would put some music in the background, very, very low. And I probably would even put some background noise, the sound of splashing or a child laughing or a seagull coming across, just to give it that extra little bit there to make that. I'm going to fade it out a little bit. There we go, just so that you can see that a little better. And then that way we could clearly talk about what was going on. And that would be a great way to have some type of, that would be a good way to have some sort of discussion then, or a lead in about about water pollution. So again, your presentations it's you talking, yes, but it's other elements also that make it very important. Again, visual interest, polluted water, the polluted is black, the water is blue, but the pollution is clearly seeping into the water because the A is black and the A section cross beam looks like a little droplet. Adding music, adding background noises of water splashing, of seagulls going across, or whatever you want to call it, or whatever you want to put in there. All those type of items bring people into your presentation, and that's what you want. You want to create an emotional connection. You want to create visual interest, which creates an emotional connection. So that was a simple example of looking for inspiration, drawing on some basic ideas, and then going through and making a very quick title slide, which again draws people in. Because again, most people will simply put this image in here and put the term polluted water up there. And again, there's nothing wrong necessarily with that, but this type of thing makes all the difference in the world, because the more you can make your audience think in a good way will make your presentation better. Again, you don't want them to have to overly think where they don't know what you're talking about. But just by creating visual interest, your mind can't stop thinking about, wow, we're really going to, this is what we're going to find out about. This type of visual interest is making me think about whatever. And again, that's an unconscious response. By putting this up, you don't have to say a single word about, well, see how the A is black. You don't have to say any of those things. People's mind will automatically start thinking. It's involuntary. Humans are curious creatures. We want to know things. And because we want to know things, when we see something like this, we will automatically start thinking. And when we start thinking, we're going to be drawn into what you're saying, because we are going to assume that you're going to start talking to us or confirming what we're already thinking about. So I hope you learned something there, a little bit about creating titles and creating a little bit of visual interest with your titles. And again, play with it a little bit. Look at logos. Look at how they intermix shapes and text. Look at magazine layouts and magazine articles, and look how they play with shapes and colors and how they try to bind things together. Like when we showed the other text where the different words were off playing of the colors in the graphics. People do things like that all the time because, again, they want you to be visually interested. They want to draw you in. Your presentations should be no different. You should want to draw people in. So I hope that worked out well for you. I want you to give those things a try and see how that works. All right. Again, I'll probably be doing one of these probably not next Thursday, excuse me, the Thursday after next. I'm going to try to do these every other Thursday with different items. Again, I would love to hear from any of you. And of course, if you have any questions or any things you would like me to go over for these future presentations, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions. This is Ty Durant signing off. Thank you very much for spending your time with me. Have a good day. Bye-bye.